In today's video, we're going to take a look at Hulk Hogan's first year in the New World Order. Hulk Hogan by far is the most requested superstar on this channel, and I feel that making a one and done video for Hulk Hogan would be both impossible and unfair. The man means so much to wrestling and has done so much during his active years that I feel the best thing to do would be to look at certain time periods of his career. Hogan will appear on this channel at different times. We won't spend weeks on Hogan because, well, although he is the most requested superstar, not everyone wants to see consecutive videos for weeks based on one guy. So let's start at one of the more interesting time periods for Hulk Hogan, the first year of the extremely successful and lucrative New World Order in WCW. In the summer of 1996, Hulk Hogan was able to reignite his career when he became a bad guy in wrestling. For over a decade, the Hulkster had been telling us to eat our vitamins and say our prayers as he portrayed the all-American hero on television screens to great success. Hulk was smart enough to notice that times had changed even by mid-1996. People were getting tired of the same old Hulk Hogan, and people were now starting to get behind the concept of cool villains in wrestling. Hogan's audience receptions, before becoming a bad guy, had been good but nowhere near as great as what they once were. I don't think Hogan would have ever faded into obscurity had he not joined the New World Order, but I do agree that Hulk Hogan and the red and yellow stuff was getting quite tiresome. You have to understand that Hogan did not have to join the nWo in order to remain financially stable within WCW. Looking over Hogan's contract at the time, we can see that the guy was making serious money from the day he joined the company. What is interesting though is Hulk Hogan's WCW incentives, his bonuses within the company. In the most basic terms, Hogan got 15% of pay-per-view buys as a financial bonus, and if buy rates were particularly high for WCW domestic pay-per-views, Hogan got paid even bigger amounts of money based on the success of each individual show. Hogan also got 25% of ticket sales for every Nitro and Thunder show that he appeared in, with a guarantee of no less than 25 grand per show. So it's clear that it was in Hogan's best interests for people to attend shows and buy pay-per-views at home, and while gambling on the nWo wasn't a necessity, you can see that Hulk stood to make much more money if he and WCW was a success. When fans were getting tired of Hulkamania, you best believe he would hitch a ride with the nWo in hopes that shocking the world and becoming a heel would make people tune into WCW shows and buy pay-per-view shows, but still, the decision to turn heel didn't come easy to Hulk Hogan. Hulk was, and still is, very aware of how lucrative the Hulk Hogan brand is. During his time in the WWF, the man became a household name, and even still in the mid-90s, his name carried weight. Hogan had been smart and savvy enough to protect the Hulkamania image both on a commercial level and by making sure he'd done what was right for Hulk Hogan in the ring, and if he were to turn into a bad guy, there was a serious threat there that this very image would be somewhat cheapened. The decision that Hulk Hogan had to make was, in very simplified terms, based on risk versus reward. Does he risk the Hulkamania empire for the possibility of higher pay bonuses with WCW while adding a new layer to his character? Or does he keep the red and yellow image and mildly successful endorsements, simply coasting along and collecting guaranteed money? To put it in perspective, Kevin Sullivan revealed that Hulk Hogan's agent, Peter Young, actually cried on the phone to him until 2:30 in the morning that WCW should not and could not turn Hulk Hogan heel. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash arrived in WCW in the summer of 1996, claiming they were in World Championship Wrestling with the intention of taking over the company. Hall and Nash had been successful in the WWF as Razor Ramon and Diesel, and they said they had another partner who would be revealed at WCW Bash at the Beach 96. Rumours were rampant of who the third man could be, with Sting, Bret Hart, and even Davey Boy Smith being names that seemed to constantly creep up. Scott Hall said, We had no idea who it was going to be. The whole third guy thing came up by accident. I remember Kev and I called Brett and I spoke to him. Kev spoke to him and we told him it was really fun working at WCW. It was really laid back, guaranteed money, it was easy. We were so used to being in a Shark Tank in New York. Coming to Atlanta was like being in a country club. It was really tame in the locker room in WCW compared to New York. We told Brett he should come down. Bischoff was interested. He was offering him a pretty sweet deal, but Brett wasn't interested. We wanted it to be Hulk, but Hulk had creative control in his contract, so he didn't have to do anything he didn't want to do. We went to the ring. We hadn't even met Hulk yet. I met him briefly at WrestleMania 9, but I didn't know Hulk. We actually went to the ring in Daytona and Hogan wasn't even there yet. He was on a jet, flying cross country from shooting a movie. Bischoff wanted it to be Hulk before we went out. Bischoff told us, if Hulk doesn't show, I'm going to send out Sting. Going back a little, Eric Bischoff revealed in his book that he had meetings with Hulk in Hulk's home regarding the Hulkster becoming the third man in the New World Order. Hogan apparently wasn't sold on the idea initially, mainly due to being the good guy in wrestling was what gave him his fame and fortune. Bischoff left Hogan's house without a straight answer, and it was days later when Hogan picked up the phone and confirmed to Eric that he was going to turn heel. As Scott Hall mentioned, Eric was still wary of Hogan changing his mind or not even showing up at Bash at the Beach, so if Hogan didn't show or if Hogan changed his mind, Sting would have been the third man. Crazy to think that even if a plane was delayed or if Hogan slept in that day, then the future of WCW would have looked way, way different. Eric Bischoff said on his 83 Weeks podcast, I think at the time, probably a week before Bash at the Beach, is when I started letting people know about Hulk. I think I let Kevin Nash know. I know I was out in Los Angeles doing something because we met for a beer at Sunset Boulevard at some biker bar. I wasn't sure if it was going to be Hulk Hogan or Sting. One was plan A and the other was plan B. I tried to let Kevin know how much he should know, and the other part was because I was worried he would leak it out. So it was probably a week before I let those that needed to know that Hogan was going to be the third member. So Hogan made it to Bash at the Beach and turned into a bad guy. Against his agent's wishes, Hulk Hogan felt that this could be the shot of adrenaline his WCW career needed. Hogan stood in the middle of the ring and called the fans trash while reminding them that they turned their back on Hulkamania. When he walked out wearing all black on Nitro, it really hit home for a lot of people that the unthinkable had happened. The American hero of wrestling wasn't a hero anymore. He had a real disdain for some of the fans that hung on to his every word back in the 80s and early 90s. Needless to say, Hulk Hogan turning heel and forming the New World Order with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall was the right move. Hogan became not only relevant again, but he became the talk of the entire wrestling industry. And you gotta think that Hulk Hogan, now known as Hollywood Hulk Hogan, was thinking of his bank balance as the headlines came rolling in from the wrestling magazines at the time. His mission now was to stay relevant while hoping that WCW shows would sell out and people would buy the pay-per-views at home. His financial interest in the success of WCW was just too great to ignore. So let's do what we normally do and take a look at the matches Hogan had during this time period. Hogan's very first match as the leader of the New World Order happened at WCW Hog Wild in 1996, where he defeated the Giant for the WCW Championship. This also saw the championship getting the nWo spray paint job for the very first time. The match is a slow-paced affair, a lot of holds here which makes things a little flat. It is interesting though to watch Hogan work as a heel here after being such a huge draw as a babyface, so for this reason, the Hog Wild Championship match is still worth a watch. The outsiders interfered to give Hogan the upper hand, and Mr. Brutus Beefcake, the booty man, Ed Leslie himself, got dropped by the nWo when he tried to present Hogan with a birthday cake. Hogan's first title defence was just 5 days later at Clash of the Champions 33, a match that saw the Hulkster defend the championship against Nature Boy Ric Flair. This one doesn't even reach the 10-minute mark, and it was a little rough around the edges. When you watch this one, you will quickly realise why this match isn't talked about all that much. Hogan even does his classic hulking up routine during this match as a heel, which made fans cheer for him. Definitely a bad move here, but anyway, the Outsiders hit the ring and attack Flair, leading to the Horseman, Sting and Lex Luger running down for the save. This led to Hogan's next match in the nWo, a War Games match at Fall Brawl 1996. Hogan, Hall, Nash and the bogus nWo Sting defeated Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, Ric Flair and the real Sting in a good War Games match that's definitely worth your time. I feel it was after the War Games match that Hulk Hogan finally became comfortable as a heel. His promos got better in the ring and his moveset changed also to complement his Hollywood Hogan character. It took a while, but Hogan had been so used to working as a babyface that sometimes he would still mount Hulkamania style comebacks and try to work from underneath. By the time Hogan got to his next match with old enemy and friend Macho Man Randy Savage, he had fine-tuned his heel persona, but admittedly, this match here really wasn't that good. The Hogan vs Savage Halloween Havoc match in 1996 should have been spectacular, but it turned out to be one of those big fight feel main events that kinda falls flat at nearly 20 minutes long. Hogan also decided to wear this wig, which has become meme-worthy today, but those who followed WCW back then would remember that Hogan had mocked Savage about going bald in the build-up to this match. Pot calling the kettle black here for sure, but this was the reason why Hogan was wearing the wig. It was to make fun of Savage. Without the context, some people seem to think that this was Hogan actually trying a new look for himself. Anyway, the wig was soon removed during the match. Even Randy Savage himself put it on for some giggles, and those who take the time to watch the match will know it was simply used as a gag. The match ends with shady referee Nick Patrick and the Giant making sure that Randy Savage has no chance of becoming the WCW Champion. This wasn't WrestleMania 5 by any means, and if you want to see Hogan vs Savage, I'd recommend going back to 1989. After the match, Roddy Piper makes an appearance to set up the next big Hogan pay-per-view match. Two men who were in the WrestleMania 1 main event are going to square off at Starrcade 1996. Before we get to Starrcade though, I should mention that Hulk Hogan defended the WCW Championship against Lex Luger in a dark match on the 11th of November edition of WCW Nitro. Piper vs Hogan then at Starrcade. We all blindly assumed that this match, the main event of Starrcade 1996, which was billed as the match of the decade, would be for the WCW Championship. It wasn't. WCW never said it would be a championship match, but then again, they also didn't say that it wouldn't be for the WCW Championship either. We had no reason to think that Piper vs Hogan wouldn't be for WCW's top prize. Piper defeated Hogan and got a huge pop in the process, but the following night on Nitro, Hogan and Bischoff acted like the match never happened.
How can he strut out here and show his face after what happened last night?
Starrcade 1996's main event was a complete throwaway match which, in Hogan and Eric Bischoff's minds, meant absolutely nothing. We won't get into the ins and outs of Starrcade 1996. There's a story here that I'm sure could take up the remaining time on this video, but Piper vs Hogan at Starrcade 96 is something I will come back to in the future. The New World Order had become so big by this point that Eric Bischoff felt the faction could become its own brand, and to test the waters, the nWo had their first pay-per-view in January of 1997. nWo sold out. Hogan defended his title against the Giant, a man who had left the nWo following some disagreements with the faction. This one was actually pretty good. The crowd was very much behind the Giant here, but the ending again saw dodgy referee Nick Patrick help protect Hulk Hogan. As the New World Order came to the ring to destroy the Giant, the crowd loudly booed the finish and chanted, "We want Sting." On the very next episode of Nitro, we have the first televised Nitro match featuring Hulk Hogan since he had joined the nWo. Isn't that crazy when you think about it? Hogan had went from July 1996 all the way to the beginning of the new year without wrestling a single match on WCW's flagship TV show. Hogan worked a total of 11 Nitros in 1996, and every one was before the nWo even existed. When looking at match histories, you will also notice that while in WCW, Hulk liked to work the majority of his contracted Nitro dates in the first half of the year, seemingly getting these out of the way. This could also be poor foresight by Eric Bischoff too, but who knows. Of course, Hogan still showed up on Nitro and sometimes even got physical, but he was not obliged to work additional matches after he had wrestled the agreed amount in his contract. Additional matches would cost WCW additional money. Anyway, Hulk's first Nitro match of 1997 saw him lose to the Giant by DQ, and yes, the nWo interference is what led to the disqualification. Roddy Piper, the man who defeated Hulk at Starrcade in a non-title match, got a chance to win the gold at Super Brawl 7 when he faced Hogan once again. Of course, Hogan won this match and kept his WCW Championship. After Team nWo defeated Team Piper and Team WCW at Uncensored, Hulk Hogan performed in a rare house show match where he put over hometown hero Jacques Rougeau in Montreal, Quebec. It was a non-title match, of course, and the match is available in its entirety on YouTube. Hogan then used up more of his WCW Nitro dates by wrestling on the show 2 weeks in a row. Lex Luger defeated Hogan on the 9th of June episode, and the following week, Lex Luger and the Giant defeated Hogan and Dennis Rodman by disqualification. A quick match here which was done to get some last minute sales for the next pay-per-view, Bash at the Beach. Bash at the Beach 1997 was also the 1 year anniversary of the nWo formation, and the main event was once again the Giant and Lex Luger taking on Dennis Rodman and Hulk Hogan, a match that Hogan and Rodman lost. For those unaware, Dennis Rodman was brought into WCW with the sole intention of getting the company more media attention. He didn't care about wrestling at all, but also he couldn't turn down the money that was offered. In total, Dennis Rodman earned over $1.5 million for the dates he worked for WCW over 1997 and 1998. And so this ends year one of Hulk Hogan in the nWo. Remember those bonuses and incentives that were written into Hulk's contract? Well, let's just say that WCW became extremely successful during this time period. The New World Order became the hottest thing in wrestling. More people tuned into Nitro, more people bought the pay-per-views, and more people attended shows. WCW was gearing up for Starrcade in 1997, which would feature Hulk Hogan vs Sting in the main event, and thanks to the build-up for this particular match, Starrcade would also be the most financially successful pay-per-view in WCW's history, and if WCW was financially successful, so was Hulk Hogan. We will look at year 2 of Hogan in the nWo in the future, along with more Hulk Hogan videos in general as time goes on. I've heard you loud and clear. I know you want to see more Hulk Hogan on the channel, so as time goes on you will see more Hulk Hogan on Wrestling Bios. The idea is to soon have a complete collection of Hogan uploads that will be able to tell the full story of the man's professional wrestling career. Thanks for watching.